Here's a number that'll mess with your head. In 2023, the top 1% of earners in the United States controlled more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. That's not a typo. 1% of people own more than 90% of everyone else stacked together. And yet, every time a politician says, "We're going to make the rich pay their fair share," nothing really changes. Taxes go up a little, taxes go down a little. But the gap just keeps growing. So today we're asking a question that sounds simple, but is actually one of the most contested debates in all of economics. Is there a limit to how much you can tax the rich? And if there is, what happens when you hit it? Stick around, because the answer will probably surprise you no matter what side of the political aisle you sit on. Let's start with the basics. Taxation is the engine of civilization. Roads, armies, schools, hospitals, every single public good in your life is paid for through taxes. And since the beginning of organized government, rulers have had to figure out one eternal problem: who pays? For most of human history, the answer was the poor and the middle class. Peasants paid tribute, workers paid tariffs, consumers paid sales taxes. The wealthy, landowners, merchants, nobles, found ways to exempt themselves. That started to shift in the 20th century when income taxes, estate taxes, and corporate taxes pushed the burden higher up the ladder. The logic is compelling on the surface. Rich people have more money. They can afford to pay more. A dollar taken from a billionaire hurts him a lot less than a dollar taken from someone making minimum wage. Economists call this declining marginal utility. The more you have, the less each additional dollar matters to you. So taxing the rich sounds like a no-brainer. Tax them more, redistribute the revenue, reduce inequality, fund public services. Problem solved, right? Not quite, because the moment you try to actually do it, you run into a wall, and that wall has several very different layers to it. In 1974, an economist named Arthur Laffer reportedly drew a curve on a napkin. The idea was devastatingly simple. If you tax people at 0%, you collect zero revenue. If you tax them at 100%, you also collect zero revenue, because nobody would work if the government took everything. So somewhere between 0 and 100, there's a peak, a sweet spot where government collects maximum revenue. This became known as the Laffer curve, and it launched one of the biggest economic debates of the modern era. Ronald Reagan used it to justify massive tax cuts in the 1980s, arguing that lower rates would actually generate more revenue through economic growth. Supply-side economics was born, and it was controversial from day one. Here's the thing. The Laffer curve is mathematically real. There is an optimal tax rate somewhere. The argument is entirely about where that peak actually is. Conservatives say we're already above it. The tax cuts pay for themselves. Most mainstream economists disagree sharply. The evidence from the Reagan and Bush-era tax cuts suggests they mostly just reduced revenue without producing enough growth to compensate. But the napkin sketch contains a kernel of truth that even left-leaning economists have to reckon with. Past a certain point, raising tax rates produces diminishing returns, not because rich people deserve to keep their money, but because they have options that ordinary people don't. This is where things get really practical. The rich are not just sitting on a pile of cash waiting to be taxed. Their wealth is mobile, complex, and managed by armies of accountants, lawyers, and financial advisors whose only job is minimizing tax liability. First, there's capital flight. When France introduced a 75% super tax on incomes over 1 million euros in 2012, actor Gerard Depardieu famously moved to Russia and obtained Russian citizenship. Dozens of wealthy French citizens relocated to Belgium. Within 2 years, the tax was scrapped. It raised almost nothing and cost France in diplomatic embarrassment. Sweden tried something similar in the 1970s. Top marginal rates hit 85%. Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of IKEA, moved to Switzerland. The country that gave us ABBA, Volvo, and some of the world's greatest social programs was quietly losing its most productive citizens to lower tax havens. By the 1990s, Sweden had dramatically cut its top rates. Then there's the nature of wealth itself. Most ultra-rich people don't receive a salary in the way you think. They own stock. Their income is largely unrealized capital gains, increases in the value of assets they haven't sold yet. So a billionaire whose fortune grows by $10 billion in a year may technically owe very little in income tax. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and other ultra-wealthy individuals have paid effective tax rates in the single digits in some years, not because of fraud, but because the tax code simply wasn't built to capture wealth that lives on a balance sheet rather than a paycheck. And then there are offshore accounts, shell companies, trusts, and tax havens, the Panama Papers, the Pandora Papers, trillions of dollars sitting in the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, and Switzerland, legally sheltered from domestic taxation. Gabriel Zuckman, an economist at Berkeley, estimates that roughly $8 trillion in private wealth is held in offshore tax havens globally, representing hundreds of billions of dollars in lost tax revenue every single year. Even when governments design smart wealth taxes on paper, they often fall apart in practice. And this brings us to perhaps the most uncomfortable limit of all: political power. The ultra-wealthy don't just have money, they have influence. They fund campaigns, they own media outlets, they sit on the boards of universities, think tanks, and foundations that shape public discourse. When a wealth tax is proposed, a massive and coordinated effort springs into existence to kill it, delay it, water it down, or add enough loopholes to render it meaningless. Look at the history of the estate tax in the United States. In 2001, it applied to estates over $675,000 at a 55% rate. Today, the exemption is over $13 million per person, $26 million for a married couple. The tax that once applied to hundreds of thousands of Americans now applies to only a few thousand estates per year. Decades of lobbying, rebranding it as the death tax, and political pressure systematically gutted it. Elizabeth Warren proposed a wealth tax in 2019, 2% annually on wealth above $50 million. It was politically popular with the public. It died without ever coming to a floor vote. Bernie Sanders proposed versions of it too. Same result. The mechanisms of government, substantially influenced by the very people who would be taxed, prevented it from moving forward. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's just the logic of concentrated power. When you control enormous resources, you can spend a fraction of them to protect the rest. Let's look at the actual evidence. 12 European countries had wealth taxes in 1990. By 2020, only 3 remained: Norway, Spain, and Switzerland. Why? Because they consistently underperformed expectations. Wealthy individuals found ways to avoid them, administrative costs were high, and revenue was often disappointing. Germany scrapped its wealth tax in 1997 after courts ruled it unconstitutional. Sweden eliminated it in 2007. France abolished its ISF wealth tax in 2017, replacing it with a narrower property tax. Country after country tried it and moved on. But here's the nuance. Income taxes on high earners, well-designed ones with broad bases and limited loopholes, do work. The Nordic countries have high overall tax rates, but don't rely purely on taxing the rich. They tax everyone: consumption taxes, payroll taxes, capital gains taxes, at moderate levels, and use those revenues to fund genuinely universal services. The lesson from Scandinavia isn't soak the billionaires until they bleed. It's build a system where everyone contributes and everyone benefits, creating broad political support for the welfare state. That's actually harder and less satisfying than the fantasy of soaking the ultra-rich, but it works. So what do economists actually propose? A few things rise to the top of the serious policy conversation. First, taxing unrealized gains at death or above a high threshold. Right now, when a billionaire dies, their heirs inherit assets at the current market value, erasing decades of untaxed gains in what's called the stepped-up basis. Eliminating this loophole alone could generate significant revenue without a wealth tax. Second, global minimum tax rates. The OECD struck a deal in 2021 for a 15% global minimum corporate tax, backed by 130 countries. The idea: if companies can't find a lower tax jurisdiction, the arbitrage disappears.
It's imperfect, but it's a meaningful step towards closing offshore shelters. Third, serious investment in the IRS and tax enforcement. The IRS estimates a tax gap of over $600 billion per year, the difference between taxes owed and taxes actually collected. Most of that gap involves wealthy individuals and corporations exploiting complexity. Every dollar invested in enforcement returns several dollars in recovered revenue. It's low-hanging fruit that Congress repeatedly refuses to pick. Fourth, reforming capital gains taxes. In the U.S., long-term capital gains are taxed at a maximum of 20%, far below the top income tax rate of 37%. This means a hedge fund manager pays a lower rate than a nurse. Aligning capital gains rates with income tax rates would be a significant shift in who bears the tax burden. None of